Right now, on the back row of some no-name used car lot in a town you have probably never heard of, there is a sedan sitting under a thin layer of dust with over 180,000 miles on the odometer, a check engine light that has never once turned on, and a price tag lower than a decent laptop. Nobody is taking pictures of it for social media. Nobody is lined up to test drive it. And that is exactly why it is one of the smartest purchases you could make in this country in 2026. For the last few years, the used car market in America has been an absolute circus. Prices spiked, then corrected, then spiked again, and somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, an entire category of vehicle got left behind and forgotten. Modern cars are drowning in complexity. Massive touchscreens running on tablets that will be obsolete in 5 years. Turbocharged 3-cylinder engines under enormous pressure trying to squeeze horsepower out of tiny displacement. Continuously variable transmissions that terrify anyone who has ever had to replace one. Meanwhile, quietly, in driveways and used car lots across the country, an entire generation of 2000s family sedans just kept running. And running. And running. These were the cars built before the touchscreen arms race, before turbocharging became the default, before the industry decided every commuter car needed to feel like a spaceship. They were built to haul kids to school, survive the commute, and rack up 250,000, sometimes 300,000 miles on nothing more than oil changes and basic maintenance. Today, because nobody wants them, because they carry zero social status and zero cool factor, these dependable dad cars have collapsed in value to the point where they are some of the best bargains on the entire used car market. Think about what a car buyer in this era actually valued. Not lap times, not a giant infotainment screen, not a subscription service buried somewhere in the settings menu. They wanted a car that started every morning, held 5 people comfortably, and did not require a 4-figure repair bill the moment the factory warranty expired. Automakers responded by leaning on engines and transmissions that had already been proven for years, sometimes decades, in other models, rather than rushing brand new, unproven technology into a family sedan. That conservative approach is precisely why so many of these cars are still on the road today, and it is also precisely why almost nobody wants them anymore. There is no cachet in owning a 2008 Ford Fusion. Nobody is impressed by a Mercury badge. These cars do not trend online, they do not show up in car meets, and dealerships would rather wholesale them at auction than spend time reconditioning them for a showroom floor. That lack of desirability is a pricing inefficiency, and pricing inefficiencies are exactly where smart buyers make money. So here is the premise of this countdown. We're going to walk through 6 of the most bulletproof family sedans that the 2000s ever produced, cars with proven, over-engineered powertrains, simple mechanical layouts, and enormous parts availability, all of which are currently selling for a fraction of what they are actually worth as transportation. We will tell you the engine to look for, the years to target, the years to avoid, what a fair price looks like in July of 2026, and the handful of common problems every single buyer needs to know before handing over cash. And if hunting down hidden value like this is something you're into, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now, because we do this every single week, digging through the used market to find the cars that actually deserve your money instead of your Instagram feed. Now let us get into it. Coming in at number 6 is the Ford Fusion V6, specifically the first-generation cars built between 2007 and 2012. Ford designed the original Fusion off the same architecture Mazda used for the Mazda 6, which is exactly why this car drives better than a dad car has any right to. The engine you want is the 3.0-liter Duratec V6, an engine so fundamentally solid that Ford leaned on it for the better part of a decade across multiple platforms. Depending on the model year, output ranges from around 221 horsepower on the earlier cars up to 240 horsepower after the 2010 refresh. Here is the insider tip that most buyers miss. On the 2006 through 2009 V6 Fusions, Ford exclusively paired that engine with an Aisin-sourced 6-speed automatic transmission, a genuinely tough, well-engineered unit borrowed from a supplier with a strong reliability track record. When the car was refreshed for 2010, Ford introduced its own in-house 6-speed automatic, the 6F35, and that is the transmission that shows up far more often in owner complaint threads for harsh or delayed shifting. That does not mean avoid the later cars entirely. It just means if you are shopping a 2010 through 2012 Fusion V6, prioritize one with documented, regular transmission fluid changes, because neglect is what kills that unit, not the design itself. Beyond the transmission, common wear items are limited to the usual suspects for a car this age, things like door lock actuators and air conditioning components, nothing that should scare off a buyer. Because Ford built so many of these on a platform shared with the Mazda 6, parts availability in the United States is outstanding, both from Ford dealers and the aftermarket. Right now in July of 2026, a clean Fusion V6 from this generation is trading for somewhere between $3,500 to $7,500 depending on mileage and condition, which for a comfortable, genuinely quick-riding V6 sedan is an incredible amount of car for the money. The suspension tuning on this generation is also worth mentioning, since Ford spent real engineering effort tuning the chassis for confident handling rather than just soft, floaty comfort, which is why automotive journalists at the time consistently rated this generation of Fusion as one of the better driving cars in its class, V6 or not. Moving on to number 5, we stay in the same corporate family but shift over to the Mercury Milan V6, built from 2006 through 2011. If the Fusion is the well-known workhorse, the Milan is its overlooked twin. Mercury built the Milan on the exact same platform as the Fusion, using the exact same 3.0-liter Duratec V6, the same suspension geometry, and largely the same mechanical DNA, but wrapped it in a slightly more upscale interior with nicer trim materials. The catch is that Mercury as a brand was discontinued by Ford in 2011, and that single fact has quietly tanked demand for every Mercury on the used market ever since, regardless of how good the underlying engineering actually is. That stigma is your opportunity. Because fewer people cross-shop Mercury, and because the badge carries essentially zero resale prestige today, you can regularly find a Milan V6 for somewhere between $3,000 and $6,500, often several $100s cheaper than an equivalent Fusion with identical mechanicals. Parts are just as easy to find as they are for the Fusion, since the mechanical components interchange directly with both the Fusion and the Lincoln MKZ, which shared the same underlying platform. The only slightly trickier items to source are Mercury-specific trim pieces and badging, which occasionally require a trip to a salvage yard rather than a parts counter. Mechanically, though, you are buying the exact same proven 3.0-liter V6 and the same transmission logic as the Fusion, so the same rule applies: favor the pre-2010 Aisin transmission cars when possible, and check fluid change history on the later ones. At number 4, we head to South Korea for the Hyundai Sonata, internally known by its platform code, the NF generation, built for the American market from 2006 through 2010. This was the car that fundamentally changed how the world viewed Hyundai. Before this generation, Hyundai had a reputation as a budget brand you settled for. The NF Sonata is where that started to flip, and reliability is a huge reason why. Two engines are worth knowing here. The base engine is a 2.4-liter four-cylinder from Hyundai's Theta family, and the available upgrade is a 3.3-liter Lambda V6, which produced 235 horsepower when it launched in 2006, and was bumped up to 249 horsepower after a mid-cycle refresh for the 2009 and 2010 model years. Here is a critical detail for anyone worried about Hyundai's reputation for engine failures. This generation of Sonata predates the direct-injection Theta engines that were later hit with well-documented rod bearing failures and safety recalls throughout the 2010s. The engines in this NF Sonata use conventional multi-port fuel injection, an older, simpler, and considerably less troublesome design, so you're not buying into that later controversy at all. Reliability on this generation is genuinely strong, maintenance costs are low, and the interior is spacious and comfortable for a car in this price bracket. Right now, a well-kept NF Sonata is selling for between $2,800 to $6,000, and because Hyundai has built such a massive dealer network across the United States, parts remain easy to find and reasonably priced, whether you are sourcing genuine Hyundai components or aftermarket equivalents. Number 3 brings us to the Sonata's close cousin, the second-generation Kia Optima, sold in the United States from 2006 through 2010. Hyundai owns a controlling stake in Kia, and during this era the two companies shared platforms extensively, which is exactly what happened here. Underneath the sheet metal, this Optima rides on essentially the same underpinnings as the NF Sonata we just covered, which means you are getting a huge amount of the same engineering, the same suspension logic, and similar long-term durability, just wearing a different badge. The base engine is a 2.4-liter four-cylinder, and the optional engine is a 2.7-liter V6 that, depending on the specific model year, produced anywhere from around 170 horsepower on the earliest 2006 cars up to 194 horsepower by the 2009 and 2010 model years. It is not a powerhouse, but it does not need to be, because the entire appeal here is unshakable dependability at a rock-bottom price. And that price is genuinely the lowest on this entire list. Because Kia's brand reputation in the mid-2000s was even weaker than Hyundai's, resale values on this generation of Optima have fallen through the floor, with clean examples currently trading for between $2,500 to $5,500 in July of 2026. Parts availability benefits enormously from that shared Hyundai platform, since a large percentage of mechanical components interchange directly with the Sonata NF, giving you access to two brands' worth of parts inventory for the price of one unloved badge. At number 2, we cross back into American iron with a Buick LaCrosse, specifically the first-generation cars built from 2005 through 2009. The engine you are hunting for here is the 3.8-liter 3800 Series 3V6, and if you know anything about General Motors engines from this era, you already know why that matters. The 3800 platform is one of the most celebrated V6 engines General Motors ever produced, a design so consistently strong across multiple decades of continuous refinement that it repeatedly won industry recognition for engineering excellence, and by the time it reached Series 3 form, GM had ironed out nearly every weakness from earlier versions. Output sits at around 200 horsepower and 225 to 230 pound-feet of torque, paired with GM's proven 4T65E 4-speed automatic transmission. This is not a powertrain built to impress anyone at a stoplight. It is a powertrain built to still be running strong at 300,000 miles with nothing more than routine oil and fluid changes, and there are countless documented examples of exactly that happening. There is a cultural side effect that works entirely in your favor as a buyer. The LaCrosse of this era became enormously popular with older retirement-age drivers who valued comfort and reliability over styling trends, which means the used market is flooded with well-maintained, low-mileage, single-owner examples that were babied for years. Combine that with a soft, comfortable ride that rivals cars costing twice as much, and you have a genuinely underrated used car. Current prices land between $2,500 to $6,000, and because GM built the 3800 engine across an enormous range of vehicles for decades, mechanical parts remain cheap, plentiful, and easy for any independent shop to source. And now, saved for last, the holy grail of this entire countdown, the car that proves you do not need a luxury badge to get luxury car durability. Taking the top spot is the Toyota Avalon, specifically the models built from 2000 through 2005. During this era, the Avalon was Toyota's flagship full-size sedan for the American market, essentially sharing its bones with a Lexus ES, and it delivered a ride, a cabin, and a hushed quietness that punched dramatically above its price point when new, and still does today. There are two engines to know here, and the year you choose matters. From 2000 through 2004, the Avalon used the 3.0-liter 1MZ EV6, producing right around 210 horsepower, paired with a smooth 4-speed automatic transmission. For the facelift 2005 model, Toyota introduced the newer 3.5-liter 2G RF EV6, a significantly more modern engine that pushed output up into the 280 horsepower range. Now here is the one piece of due diligence every serious buyer needs before purchasing a 2000 through 2002 Avalon specifically. Those particular model years fall within a well-documented period where Toyota's 3.0-liter V6 engines, across the Avalon, Camry, Sienna, and related Lexus models, were prone to internal oil sludging under certain conditions. It was serious enough that Toyota extended engine warranty coverage to 8 years with unlimited mileage for affected vehicles, and made running production changes to the oil circulation system to correct the underlying design for 2003 and later. The practical takeaway is simple. If you can find a 2003, 2004, or 2005 Avalon with documented oil change history, you have almost entirely sidestepped that risk while still getting the same legendary reliability reputation. If you do consider an earlier 2000 through 2002 example, insist on seeing maintenance records, or better yet, favor an owner who used synthetic oil and stuck to shorter change intervals. Handled correctly, these engines are famous for sailing past 300,000 miles with nothing more than routine care. Because Toyota sold enormous volumes of this car and shares major components with the Camry and Lexus ES of the same era, parts availability, both genuine Toyota and aftermarket, is about as good as it gets on this entire list. Prices currently range from $3,500 up to $8,000 depending on mileage, engine choice, and condition, and for a car that drives like a small Lexus and can realistically outlast the loan you might take out to buy one, that is an outstanding amount of value. Step inside one of these and the difference from an ordinary 2000-era family sedan is immediately obvious. Thick sound insulation, a genuinely quiet cabin at highway speed, and a soft, isolated ride that Toyota specifically tuned to compete with luxury sedans costing twice as much when new. That is the entire reason this car earns the final, biggest spot on this list. Every other car in this countdown asks you to accept some compromise in exchange for reliability. The Avalon barely asks you to compromise at all. So there you have it, 6 bulletproof, thoroughly unglamorous, and thoroughly underrated family sedans that prove reliable transportation does not have to come with a massive price tag in 2026. From the Ford Fusion's Mazda-derived chassis, to the Mercury Milan hiding in plain sight, through the Hyundai and Kia twins that quietly rewrote what those brands meant, past the retiree favorite Buick LaCrosse, and finally landing on the Toyota Avalon, the closest thing to a Lexus you can buy for the price of a used motorcycle. Every single one of these cars was engineered in an era that valued mechanical simplicity over flashy technology, and that philosophy is exactly why they are still running strong decades later while flashier competitors are already in the scrapyard. So here is the question for the comment section. Which one of these 6 would you actually park in your own driveway, and did we miss a dad car bargain that deserves a spot on this list? Drop your pick below, and we will see you in the next one.